disobeys the directive of the Supreme Court.
And the deadline is set by the CBN is February 10. That is tomorrow. Now,
yes.
Based on the ex parte order of the Supreme Court, what does that imply for the deadline set by the CBN?
What it implies is that the deadline is automatically, unless somebody wants to be in breach of the law, the deadline is automatically extended to 15th when the court will open elections and decide one way or the other. So it's for the person against whom that order was made to obey the order of the Supreme Court. And if it is the president, it's a duty on him, a legal duty on him, to instruct the Supreme Court, whom he gave approval, not to implement until the date that the Supreme Court has directed.
Now, you said that disobedience to this would be in contempt of court. If the president decides the CBN goes ahead with the implementation of the deadline, what will be the consequence of that?
Well, the president has immunity. He will be violating the law if he does so. And because he has immunity from criminal and civil actions, he cannot be sued. But you understand what that means for law and order in the country. If the president himself disobeys judgments of the court, then nobody is bound to obey the judgments of the court or to obey the laws of the land. You recall what's going on in the United States. Here, Mr. President in the United States is being investigated for classified documents that the prosecutors believe ought not to be taken home, that we are taking home. He's cooperating with the investigation. It's only in Banana Republic that the president sees himself as a demigod. Despite the fact that he has immunity, he has an obligation, primary obligation, to obey the law and encourage citizens to obey the law.
Now, the Supreme Court has granted an ex parte order stopping that deadline without necessarily hearing from the CBN, and like you rightly mentioned, until the 15th when a substantive matter will be heard. The CBN, which is tasked with the responsibility of formulating monetary policies, must have a reason. It set the initial date and then extended it to February 10, implying that there might be some consequences if that deadline is not adhered to strictly or not adhered to at all. Did the Supreme Court, in your estimation, give any thought to this? What the possible impacts or effects might be on the country, on the economy, on the elections, for example, which is one of the reasons given for the redesigning of the naira notes. Do you suppose any thought was given to that when the Supreme Court decided that the CBN or any other party, for that matter, should halt in the implementation of the deadline?
The responsibility of a court, including the Supreme Court, is to look at the contending arguments and contending interests before the court. And the parties who have gone before the court have talked of how that policy, the way it is being implemented, is affecting the state and its citizens. And it is for the court eventually to draw a line between the policy and the interest that the policy is pursuing to determine whether it should be allowed to proceed or not. But for the court to do so, the court has to hear the parties. And that's why the court has adjourned to a date when it will be able to hear all the parties before reaching a decision. It will provide opportunity for the other party to present the cogent reasons why it thinks that this policy must be implemented.
Pardon me, Barrister, but that's the essence of my question exactly. Now, there is a date set for this already. What if those who went to court, their only intention was to ensure that that date did not happen?
The date is an administrative policy. There is nothing in the CBN Act that makes the CBN immune from legal action. So if the CBN has the responsibility to formulate policies, it doesn't mean that these policies are cast in stone and that, like God, they are immutable. The courts will decide whether a policy meets the public interest requirement it seeks to serve, or whether its effect on those who have complained is higher. And the court will therefore determine. Even laws made by the National Assembly are struck down by the court. When the National Assembly acts in excess of its powers, the Supreme Court will strike it down so that that law is unconstitutional and void. How much more an administrative policy? So it's not about the CBN's intent to ensure that what it wants is done. The concern of the court is justice. and all parties will be given opportunity to tell the court why each own side of the story is the better one that is in the interest of justice.
So when you say all parties will be given, the chance, does that suggest that the Supreme Court that suggests the Supreme Court has not reached a decision on this yet?
No, the Supreme Court has not. All it did is to preserve the rest and give parties opportunities to act. It's an interim order. An interim order is a temporary order that lasts till the date that is given in that order. And the essence is to enable the court to hear from the parties before it can reach a decision on the substantive complaint. The court cannot reach a decision without hearing the parties. So when you file a suit and file an interim application, you're asking the court to preserve the circumstance to the point where it will hear the parties to take a decision on the matter. The court did not give a judgment. It gave an interim order, which is to preserve the circumstances pending the hearing of the parties before it can reach a decision. It hasn't given a judgment on the matter.
It is hard factor Nigeria Info her input Harcourt. 24 minutes gone past 5 o'clock. We've got a commercial break to attend to now. Headlines 5:30 p.m. After which we'll return. Conversation will continue. Dismissed suit against FG on old naira deadline. AGF tells Supreme Court. My guest, Barrister Wokocha, will still be on the conversation when we return. Remember, joining via Facebook and Twitter at Nigeria Info PH. To stick around. Conversation returns shortly. Welcome back, and thanks for staying tuned. 28 minutes ago, before 6 p.m. Top of the hour at 6, the major news comes up. The cautions are on still. However, dismissed suit against FG on old naira deadline. The AGF tells Supreme Court. Joining via Facebook and Twitter at Nigeria Info PH. My guest is joining me via phone, Barrister Richard Wokocha. Barrister Wokocha, you're welcome back.
Thank you, guys.
Just to be clear once again, the temporary order given by the Supreme Court implies or means definitively that the February 10 deadline for the phasing out of the old naira note no longer stands.
It implies that the president is compelled by law to ensure that it does not stand until 15th when the court will hear the matter.
So, once again, still along those lines, what it means is even tomorrow, 10th, the day after 11th, the day after 12th, the day after 13th, and even to 14th, what it means is that the old naira notes will still be considered legal tenders.
In a law-abiding country, and in a country governed by law, yes, that will be the meaning. Considering that CBN is not a direct party in the suit, what it means is that the approving authority is under legal duty to restrain them from implementing what he approved, which is 10th, until 15th when the court will hear them.
Are you suggesting that it's one thing for the Supreme Court to give the order, it's another thing for it to be given effect to?
If the CBN directly was a party to the suit, then the order would have been to the CBN and would have said automatically that's what it should be. But the order was to the approving authority. That authority has a legal responsibility to ensure that the order of the court is not flouted, and that is by authorizing or ordering those whom he gave approval earlier to suspend that approval until after the court hears the matter on 15th.
If the CBN goes on to implement this, can they implement or to give effect to the February 10 deadline? Can the president dissociate himself from the actions of the CBN?
He cannot, because it's the approving authority. To me, he flouted the order of the Supreme Court. To me, he flouted the interim order given by the Supreme Court.
Will there be any consequence to the CBN if it goes on to give effect to the February 10 deadline?
Insofar as the court approval from the president, there will be no consequence on that. It's only if the president gives an order to the contrary in recognition of the order of the court that they will be acting as some peril to themselves. But if the approving order, the approving authority which had approved that it should end on 10, does not reverse that approval, they will not be liable for what they do. Because the order was not given directly to them, it was given to the approving authority. So it is he that has violated the law.
All right, let's get you all together right now. Contributions are very much welcome. Joining, call 070-093-093. That's 070-093-093. Also via facebook.com/Nigerian for PH, via Twitter at Nigerian for PH. I also asked amongst several questions and offer for this conversation what impact do you suppose this might have on the general elections. Kelly's promise goes, no matter what people are going through now because of the scarcity of the naira, I believe it will go a long way in preventing vote buying. Hello, Hard Fact, welcome. Please go on. Hard Fact, welcome. You're live on radio. Please go ahead. Also via Facebook, Hector Dokubo goes, in as much as I appreciate the position on the Supreme Court on the naira swap policy because Nigerians are suffering the consequences of the CBN policy, the highest court has suspended a pending crisis the CBN policy would create from tomorrow. Though I hope the court is not working for Tinubu to succeed because the Supreme Court seems to be controversial these days, especially the recent rulings on Ahmed Lawan's case. Nigerians are confused. What is the Supreme Court up to? Also via Twitter at Richie Walker tweets. Those who are jubilated over the Supreme Court temporary order concerning the new naira note to be ready to take their old money to the Supreme Court after the CBN deadline tomorrow. If you choose to, but there are alternatives, you can also use the lower denominations of 100 naira to continue any economic activity. We know the new notes are being hoarded. Nigerians should hold their banks accountable for not paying with the lower denominations. Your thoughts are welcome still, 070-093-093. Barrister, in spite of this temporary...
Yes.
Okay, I'll come to the question shortly. Okay. Let's take a call now. Hello, Hard Fact, welcome. Go ahead.
Good evening,
go ahead, please. Hello? Please go ahead.
Good. First and foremost, I want to salute my learned senior, Barrister Wokocha, who is there with you, via phone. Now, first, it's supposed to elapse tomorrow. But you also recall that the CBN gave a 7 days grace, automatically translating to be that it ceases the old notes ceases to be a on the 17th.
Please, cannot you like that, because what is entirely wrong? According to the CBN's deadline of tomorrow, the old notes cease to be legal tenders tomorrow. But the CBN gave a 7 days grace for those who want to still return them to do so directly at the CBN office.
Yes, I said it's for.
Hello. Okay. I apologize. We can't hear what you're saying clearly. Do call back if you can, please. Now, Barrister, to the question I was asking you earlier. So, considering the Supreme Court's temporary order stating that tomorrow's deadline cannot hold until the 15th when it will hear the substantive matter, does this imply that there is a possibility that the CBN will rule in favor of the CBN's policy?
That you say it implies what?
I said, is there a possibility that the Supreme Court would rule in favor of the CBN's policy?
There is always every possibility, but the Supreme Court has to hear what the policy is and match it against the complaint that was brought before it can reach a decision. We cannot preempt the court and begin to think of what the court may rule. There are only two positions: the contention that it should take effect immediately and the one that it should not take effect immediately. So the court will have to hear the parties before it can reach a decision.
What will the Supreme Court be considering in its bid to reach a decision?
The public policy that the policy is pursuing, the public interest that the policy is pursuing, and the adverse effect that the contestant, that is the applicant before the court, are saying is being suffered. The court will have to weigh that impact of the policy against the public interest that the policy was designed to achieve and decide whether the circumstance demands that immediate halt should be done or whether it should be extended. I think those are the two interests that the court will have to weigh. The public interest goes behind the public policy and the impact complained of by those who are complaining, who are also citizens and whose rights are protected by the Constitution of Nigeria.
Now, whilst the Supreme Court justices, no doubt, must be extremely learned persons, but I don't think that they are economists or they have any rich history or knowledge of economy and monetary policies and the rest of that. So how would they be able to reach an informed decision on matters of monetary policy, on matters of economy and all of that?
Well, the court is a court of law, and the law, every judge has the law in his breast, as it is said. It is the parties who are urging the court that will provide the evidence to justify the facts that they have canvassed. It is based on that, on the evidence provided by the parties, that the court can reach a decision. I think the matter is not an economic question. If you will permit me to express personal opinion, I think this policy is not an economic question, it's a political question.
Can you expatiate on that, please?
An economic policy is one which is informed by economic reasons to enhance the economic fit of the country and to affect the economy of the country one way or the other. And economics does not include crime of vote buying and election and abuse of election. And those are not economic questions, those are political questions. And if I may extend my thoughts, I've been amazed at the entire drama. This will be the first nation in the world I know that puts its economy and citizens at stake because its agencies cannot perform their duties. Elections are held every 4 years. Does it mean we will change currency every 4 years? Because the INEC, the security agencies, and all other agencies that are involved cannot enforce its anti-corruption policies. We subject the economy and the citizens to what is going on every 4 years because our agencies are not working. It's not for the citizens to bear the brunt. So I think it's a political question, not an economic question, and this will be the first nation in the world that will use its economy and the fate of its citizens to pursue political questions.
And then to wrap up the conversation, many thanks for listening. Many thanks to my guest, Barrister Richard Wokocha, is former chairman, Nigeria Bar Association at Assoc branch, also associate professor of public law at the Rivers State University. Barrister Wokocha, many thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dario.
Commercial break comes up shortly. Top of the hour at 6 p.m. is the major news. A review of all the matters discussed on the show today comes about to us during the open season segment. Your thoughts on my side comments, my rant and other discussions on the show today. Please stay tuned. Hard Facts continues shortly.